Here's the 30-second lesson on what legends know. Never practice nunchucks in a crowded room. Never eat chole before a road trip. Always take your shirt off before you iron it. Don't take a call near a swimming pool. And don't forget, saving is not investing. Legends don't just save, they invest in mutual funds. Mutual fund investments are subject to market risks. Read all scheme-related documents carefully.
On the day the Sri Lankans vote to elect their new president in a close election, it is useful to remind ourselves of how maturely and calmly they've managed the transition after the climactic events just over a couple of years ago, that is in April 2022. They are choosing from three familiar faces in their mainstream politics. There is no instability, there are no surprises as far as the personnel in contention are concerned. Herein lies a very important lesson that nations and societies will sometimes have upheavals. Many will self destruct as a result or go into a rinse repeat cycle of change and instability. Those that survive and probably also emerge stronger will need that one greatly underappreciated attribute: democratic patience. What is it? What is democratic patience and how does it work? Sri Lanka first. In July 2022, the world looked in awe at the pictures of protesters ransacking the presidential palace, picking up memorabilia, souvenirs from there, swimming in its pool, and making reels. The government was swept away, as were the president and the prime minister, brothers Rajapaksa. What did not result, however, was a vacuum in which random protesters, student leaders, NGOs, or busybody dual passport holders could move in. Check out Bangladesh for contrast. They forced their incumbent into exile, that is Hasina, an unelected and unelectable government of NGOs, students, technocrats, and closet Islamists moved in. They are now calling in native academics from overseas to write a new constitution because, after all, writing a constitution is a serious business. How can you leave it to politicians? So you can first make a constitution without politicians and then can have democracy. That is one hell of a thought. They've also given magistracies powers to all commissioned officers, thereby formally bringing the army into governance. Call it Pakistan Light. Both neighbors had similar upheavals. How did one manage the transition so smoothly while the other never even tried? Add Nepal to the mix. A mass movement and an armed Maoist insurgency ended the monarchy and brought in democracy. In democracies 16 years since, the country has seen 8 prime ministers share 16 short terms. So 8 prime ministers and 16 prime ministerships in 16 years. But they are steadfastly working on making their democracy better, their institutions stronger. There are setbacks, but they are working on it. A democracy is always a work in progress. They are blessed. The Nepalese are blessed with democratic patience. Democracy is messy. Generals, dictators, ayatollahs, Nobel laureates, the one short solution people, they look and sound so different, virtuous and smooth. The countries that fall for the temptation of their apolitical promise are the ones that haven't yet matured to endure the mess, heat and dust, high and low points, which are inevitable in a democracy. If you haven't got that patience, you look for shortcuts and stopgap arrangements. Look at Bangladesh, for example. The Sri Lankan transition was smooth, with familiar faces brought in, among them the current incumbent and candidate Ranil Wickremesinghe, 75, the last of their long marchers. Sri Lankans did not trade democracy with an import, either from some neighbors or global foundations loaded with the breathtaking belief that they can democratize poor, unsophisticated, I should put it all in quotes, poor, unsophisticated third world. That's why whether Wickremesinghe wins or loses, it will only strengthen our argument. Just see how he describes his politics and position in an interview he gave to Vandana Menon of ThePrint. I will share a link with you in the description. He says he took over when a political vacuum loomed, when nobody, either from the ruling party or the opposition, wanted to take responsibility. Now it is up to the people to choose their new president, and whatever their choice, he will accept it. He became a junior minister at 28, 1977, has been prime minister and president multiple times. The protesters in 2022 wanted change. If Vikramasinghe represents anything, it's continuity. He was accepted as a credible, convincing choice because of his democratic familiarity. That brought solace to the population, including the protesters. He stabilized the ship and has submitted himself to an election on the due date. Which takes us back to the question, why do some nations manage these upheavals successfully but others go to pieces? We could go back about 3 decades and begin with what were grandly called color revolutions in the former Soviet or Soviet bloc territories, Georgia, Kyrgyzstan, Yugoslavia, even Ukraine. These were called color revolutions because protesters often wore shirts in a particular color denoting the uprising in each country. This was succeeded by the Arab Spring and its Tahrir Square. Ukraine, by the way, also had their Maidan Revolution with mixed results. So this was color revolution was succeeded by the Arab Spring and its Tahrir Square. Each ended disastrously, either bringing in a fresh dictatorship or a breakup of the country, for example, Yugoslavia. Google New Delhi plus 2011 plus Ramlila Maidan plus Tahrir Square. See what Google throws up, then lean back, take a deep breath, and reflect on how we tossed the same poison chalice. How did we escape the same bullet, if you want to put it that way? Google will also tell you that there were enough smart people at that point calling the Anna movement India's Tahrir Square or Ramlila Maidan India's Tahrir Square. It looked like everybody wanted change, a new system, and though it wasn't said as such, a new constitution. Why? Because mera neta chor hai. My politician is a thief. The war cry was, we must change the system. Ultimately, all that changed was the government in New Delhi through elections. India was saved from a Tahrir Square calamity. The fuel of that movement was impatience with our political status quo. Democracy that put in power unpad or gamar, that is illiterate, and country bumpkins, a description used by liberal actor Om Puri on Anna Hazare's stage. This politics had to go, and smart, educated people, Nobel laureates, Magsaysay Award winners, former all India services officers, IAS, IPS, IRS, etc., and former generals must take over. Enough is enough. The middle class and the upper crust were both on board at that point, with assorted freelancers, which is liberals, libertarians, leftists, right nationalists, anarchists, as also most of the media, definitely all of the news TV, who wouldn't hop onto such a TRP-friendly moral pulpit. Some media stars spoke on Anna's stage. Some exhorted the army brass to join him. In 1975, by the way, Indira Gandhi had used as her justification for the emergency Jayaprakash Narayan's relatively harmless call to the armed forces and police forces to not follow what he called unlawful orders. Manmohan Singh's UPA 2 was no Indira Gandhi, yet there are 3 reasons why we escaped this catastrophe. The first, that whatever the Hawa then, everybody did not want this change. The chattering classes, TV channels, NGO leaders, film actors, and superstar anchors, however famous they might be and however large their followings, they are not everybody. India's system sustains on the 1.5 billion who believe in it. That's why nobody of any consequence in the establishment, civil or military, joined the movement. Nobody, well, except our holy national chief accountant, if indirectly. The second, because the political class fought back. To see how well, watch the video recording of the Lok Sabha session on Jan Lokpal Bill on 25th of August 2011. As I noticed in a national interest that I wrote 2 days after this, I will share a link with you with the description. A most devastating point was made by the late Sharad Yadav, then a member of parliament. Before you junk this system, he said, remember that without the wisdom of Gandhi and Ambedkar, which is what this parliament represents, people like him would not even be allowed to come to Delhi and graze their cattle here. This house, he said, is the only place where you can see the faces of the entire nation, where Dalits are equal and names like Ghurau Ram, Garib Ram, and Pakodi Lal walk around as MPs. A Pakodi Lal or Garib Ram, in fact, would characterize the vast Indian mass much more aptly than any Nobel laureate. And that mass believes in their constitutional system. That's the third reason why India's Tahrir Square folded up, or India's so-called Tahrir Square folded up. A smooth electoral transition followed 3 years later, and the same politics subsumed the sharpest minds and leaders of the same movement, while Anna Hazare himself, the self appointed Mahatma Gandhi, faded away into an item number. And anytime something happens, you see a 1 minute video where he's ranting. So he became an item number like that. A clown, as he always was, if an angry one now. An angry and a frustrated and a rejected one now. India emerged stronger from this because its poorest people had democratic patience, as do Nepal and Sri Lanka. And America's rejection of Trump's desperate bid to overturn the 2020 election results with that invasion of Capitol Hill. The Bangladeshis have displayed the opposite. Unelected caretakers there want to confect a new constitution without the politicians and then hold elections just like any garden variety Pakistani dictator. Odds are that they will end up not in a very good place. If you don't have patience for its din and chaos, you do not deserve democracy. Our hypothesis is being put to the test all at the same time next door in Sri Lanka, Bangladesh, and Pakistan.